Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most? And do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right. No extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
All right, welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Chad Prevost. He is the founder of Big Self School. He's a certified Enneagram coach and facilitator. He's an author, he's a podcast host, and he is a keynote speaker. So Chad, I'm excited about this episode. It's a little different than what we normally do on The Wealth Flow, but I think whether you're looking at investing or anything else, it's always important to kind of make sure that you keeping yourself in a good state. And so can't wait to hear about everything that that we're going to cover here on today's topic.
Well, fantastic, Keith. Great to be on here with you. Thanks for your openness to having me on your podcast, and your show, which I know really has a lot of detailed and specific information about real estate, investing, wealth building. And you're right, though, whether you're working with others, working on yourself, there is a lot of insight and knowledge that we need to have, especially with all the data out there and practices that we can employ. And I will say that the kind of coaching that we do is industry agnostic, as you might say. It does work across industries and all kinds of leadership capacities. Whether you're doing a straight up coaching thing with or without the Enneagram, it's all very fascinating and can get people results. So anyway, great to be on your show. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Chad. And with every guest, I really like to kind of start with where you grew up and just kind of your background, what led you to coaching and, just kind of your journey so far.
Yeah, it's mine has been one of trying out a lot of things. And let's see, how do I say this quickly? I am a California kid, was born in California. I'm the firstborn of a minister. And so we would move around a lot. And when we had to move from California to Richmond, Virginia, that was a dramatic change in my life. And I went to high school and in Richmond, Virginia. But I've moved all around, went to college in Texas, where you are, and love some Texas. But I was an English major in college, and I was like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life as I was graduating? And I didn't know. And maybe there's a little bit of an avoidance there. There was a girl I wanted to stick around for. And I was like, there was a new seminary coming out at Baylor. And I was like, you know what? I want to do good in the world. And I think I want to go to seminary. I felt called to some kind of maybe a ministerial occupation. And almost immediately upon doing it, I realized that this probably isn't what I want to do for my life, but I stuck with it. I had a tremendous amount of learning and experience that came from it, and I don't regret it. But 3 years later, 1997, when I was graduating, I was like, I still don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I did some exploring, and I was like, I ended up in a PhD program, but it was for creative writing. And so I became a professor, and I did that for 10 years in writing. I was mostly teaching writing and literature. And I kind of thought, this is a way for me to be able to have a job and do something meaningful, help others while being able to fulfill that passion and idea for wanting to be a writer. But as I think in about 2011, I realized that this is quite a grind. It's quite underpaid, and it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. It's not the passion I thought it would be. So I tried a lot of things. I've done a lot of, you're right, writing, freelancing, and there was a time I got some experience broadcasting and podcasting at a startup. I've worked in a logistics and tech startup space for a few years. And then in 2020, when I was burning out in my own way, my wife and I had this opportunity to fulfill a dream that we kind of had even before we got married in 1999. And I'm dating myself. But it was like, Shelley, you could be the counselor. I could be the teacher. But we went off in our different career paths. And then in 2020, this inflection point, the best of times and the worst of times, to be able to start a mental health coaching company, we launched Big Self School. And it was this idea of like, why school? It was, well, we wanted to do something where we were democratizing mental health. We were trying to non-stigmatize it, make it more fun to do some of this, even like preventative work on yourself, more self-awareness. And we had this vision of like classes and community and bringing lots of people in. And it was a challenge because like the best of times, yes, everybody was immediately beginning to like talk about mental health, feel like they recognized a need for it. And everyone was online wanting to do it. And it was a very cluttered, chaotic space. But Keith, like during that time, as my transformation continued, I thought at the time I would be the writer and the researcher and maybe the podcaster for the company. But after about a year in, I was beginning to do the practices and the work, and I wanted to be a coach as well as my therapist and coach wife. So I began to go on that certification journey. I had known about the Enneagram in even the 90s, but I didn't really know it. And so in 2020, I began getting a certification, went really deep into it. I just find it so incredibly useful and way beyond just a normal typology. Yeah. So, I mean, there's all kinds of effective typologies. I love Strength Finders. I love Myers-Briggs. I love what DISC assessments. They're fine. A lot of people use those in the work environment. The Enneagram it can be used in the workplace super functionally. It can be used in personal, professional context. It helps open up self-awareness and self-observation it can be used surface, and it has this tremendous degree of depth for many applications. And so I don't have to use it in coaching. We often do. And a lot of times when I work with organizations across industries, because a lot of people are Ennea curious these days. And what is the Ennea? And it helps with all kinds of communication. So I will bring in trainings of 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours on the Enneagram. And it usually, when an organization is ready for it, has profound results, even for such a relatively short amount of time for an engagement. But wait, did that answer your question? Where
I think you did, but why don't we maybe just go? Why don't we talk about what exactly it is, Enneagram coaching, and kind of what's all involved with it? It's interesting. The mental health space has really changed, as you indicated. And really, I think people are a whole lot more open to learning about it, open to raising their hand and saying, "Hey, I need some help here." And obviously, right now we're in a very stressful time, so I think this is kind of a timely episode for us as well. But yeah, if you can kind of just give us the full background on what is it, and what is going through that process do for somebody.
Well, let's see. How much time do we have to go into the history of the Enneagram? No, so a lot of people maybe get put off by or don't understand what the Enneagram is when they see that like weird symbol. The symbol is fascinating and it is ancient. It's rooted in ancient esoteric traditions. And it's fascinating. And so there's a lot of like mystery around that idea. But I will say the Enneagram of personality, such as we understand it, really was introduced to us about 50 years ago in the 70s. And it's also the sum total of like anything that has to do with what we know about psychology that's come for the past 100 to 120 years that we really know about it from Jung and Adler and Freud and all the many contributors, men and women. It's fascinating how across cultures, regardless of gender, in all capacities, there are these 9 archetypal personality patterns. And the fascinating part is the way that they're arranged on these 9 types are indications of directions you can grow. So I will also pause to say a lot of people immediately when they hear about this idea of a typology, no matter what it is, they are like, I don't want to be labeled. Thank you very much. I'm far more complex. Besides, this is super subjective, how I may answer these things. And I totally appreciate it all. I think we all feel that way. But overall, I think a memorable and helpful response is to say, it isn't labeling you. It is describing a box of behavior that you're already in and may not be very aware of. And so that's it. It's helping to illuminate and bring out insights. And so there are no shortcuts in the practices that we end up being brought to the door of choice. Like I love that idea of like, when we get awareness of ourselves, we're at least brought up to options of continuing to double down and do the same behavior that's getting us the current results that we're getting. Or now at least we have an option and a choice to move in a different direction, practice different things in order, shift that observer in order to try to take different actions and get different results. And so that's the Enneagram is not the end all be all. But to me, if there was a single typology that we were going to use because it has so much resonant depth, it would be the Enneagram. That's why I've written a book about it and have gotten the certifications, find it so fascinating, practice it in my own life. By the way, it does work in the workplace. Even if you can't change someone else, right? You can't, because we can't expect to change others. We start with ourselves. But I know I'm kind of going sideways for a minute but just when we can even understand, like, okay, I am a 4 communicating with an 8. An 8 wants me to be succinct, say it like it is. And knowing how to communicate with others is helpful in and of itself, helps build trust, helps build credibility, helps in communication broadly. And then also there's many applications in the workplace, but then in our own personal lives as a parent. Knowing my kids' types, we don't just go around labeling, but when we begin to understand our kids' types, how to parent them better, and with our spouse, relationally, with friends, knowing why maybe like if I'm a 4, I am a 4, I'm very relational, and my 5 friend I get along with because we love ideas, but he's much cooler, like emotionally, and I don't get it. Well, I have insight to understand why now and what I'm needing. So there's lots of insights that are very helpful in a lot of applications. It was originally, without going too deep in it, it's kind of fascinating. It came from South America, the Enneagram of personality, from Oscar Ichazo. He had a school. He wanted to kind of keep it under wraps because he was afraid of what the West would do with it, that we would McDonaldize it, that we would throw it into our capitalistic system. And in some ways, perhaps we have. But I think we're all so grateful that we do have this depth of a form of knowledge and insights into our personality. Claudio Naranjo studied with Oscar Ichazo. He brought it to Berkeley, California in 1971. And now there have been several iterations and waves of practitioners, people developing tests with it, deeper and deeper understandings and applications of it, some with a spiritual emphasis, some with a workplace emphasis, different manifestations.
One question,
Yeah,
Chad, is so is like the Myers-Briggs and the DISC assessments, are those kind of rooted in the Enneagram, or are they just another type of test? Or I mean, is there any similarities between those?
There are similarities. They do not come from the Enneagram, to answer that question quickly. To me, the DISC is descriptive and very broad, and sort of, in the ways I've seen it, sort of kind of helpful. So the Myers-Briggs is really fun. I've taken it many times. Yes, it's nice to know that you're an INFP. And yes, there is one organization that does use it as a growth tool, but for the most part, it is merely descriptive to me. It's like, okay, so I'm an INFP and you're a ESTJ, but what about it really? And the Enneagram looks at like not only a behavioral description of types, but then we get to understand, well, what was that motive? What's that motivation, that like unseen, even unconscious motivation that's creating that behavior? Because like different types may, in certain way, like I said, the 4 and the 8 both appreciate authenticity, but for very different reasons. The 4 wants to be understood and say things that are real and true, and the 8 wants you to say it like it is, right? And the 1, the perfectionist, wants authenticity of everyone doing it right. So there's different motivations, and so that's, I think, to answer your question, I think the Enneagram is more powerful because of like knowing some of those motivations behind the behaviors, and like kind of quickly when someone does land on their type and recognize their type, it's often like being like, they're like, oh, wow. Like they begin to see it, and then they're like, oh, and others see this too. So it can be vulnerable work, even in a 2-hour workshop, when someone like realizes, oh, I'm a 2, and my motto is I can make anyone like me. And my need for that is to be made to feel like I have that passion of pride, because it makes me feel better and kind of puffed up when others need me, even though the disguise is, how sweet and nice and helpful are those 2s? And it's all unconscious, right? And so it's just, wow, really helpful there with things like that.
Okay. And so there's a total of 9 different kind of, as you mentioned at one point, maybe a somewhat of a box that you kind of have a tendency to fall within.
Yes.
Do you want to maybe cover what each of those are, or do you think that would be beneficial to the audience?
Yeah, okay. Let's try to do that. Let's try to go around the wheel in an efficient way that doesn't take up too much time. I like to, well, what's fascinating, if we might just pause before we even go, we start with 8. We don't all often go chronologically, and I know it might seem confusing right at first, but it's actually easier when we think of, there are body types, there are the heart types, and there are the head types, where as soon as we begin to say that, it's like, but in the end, we are 3-brained beings, and we all obviously can be in our bodies, and we all use emotions, and we all are in our heads. But this idea of, we have a tendency, a predisposition where we really lead with one. And I think that's a helpful way of beginning to dive into the understanding of these numbers, these types, and that each has a core motivation. So the body types, it's anger. They have a low level unconscious emotion of anger. And the heart types, it's sadness, and head types, it's fear. And each has a different relationship to this. So 8s are the powerful challenger, and they overdo that expression of that unconscious anger. They come with power. They're bold. I really like, I mean, all types are equal and I love everyone, but I will say that I do love the 8 energy in a lot of ways. I mean, and all, there's healthy and unhealthy dimensions to this, of course, but in general, I do love that 8 energy as a 4, because I respect that boldness and that moving forward and that not worrying about what anybody else thinks, and being precise. And yeah, so that's the challenger. The neighboring style there, as we just move across the dial of these body types first, is 9. And the 9 is often traditionally called the peacemaker, the modest mediator. We often call it too. And in the relationship to that fundamental emotion of anger is to underdo the anger and to fall asleep to it a little bit, to try to just and fall asleep to themselves in a way, at least what they need. And they're a very other referencing type, thinking of like meeting other, what is everyone, and it's very democratic. And so a lot of people think, oh, well, the 9s, they're like kind of lazier or very yielding and compliant. And that's not necessarily true. A lot of 9s are leaders, especially in the workplace, because in fact, in today's workplace, being a 8 challenger can ruffle a lot of feathers. Being a 9, is like, I'm going to consult with what everyone else thinks before I make a decision. It can be effective.
Yeah.
And then the 1 is, they are the ones that they're in ambivalence to that anger feeling. So there's always in these centers of intelligence, there's always in kind of an overdoing of that and an underdoing and an ambivalence too. And so the 1s are in this ambivalence to anger. They feel the anger. They're called the perfectionists traditionally. We try to consider them also like the principled reformer, because perfectionist has taken on a negative connotation in some ways, and every type has high sides and challenges and things to work on. And the 1 is like, in the workplace, you want a 1, right? Because they are just even in personality. Like, what I mean is, like, even when they don't have a lot of awareness, just in personality, their behavior is that they want to do things right. They want to do things with integrity. They're very hardworking. They play by the rules, and they expect everyone else to be doing it. And so what's going on there is this, usually they're the most famous. We can all have inner critics. Different types have them more than others. But the 1s are famous for having this very loud, almost board, and the board of directors in your head, they have a very loud inner critic that is, they're harder on themselves. This gives us grace for the 1s, is they are actually harder on themselves than they are on everyone else who's like feeling, okay, I didn't do it quite right. Or I'm feeling this like passive aggressive thing from you. I don't like the judgment I'm feeling. Well, just know that they're being harder on themselves than they are on you. And so this anger can leak out. That every type has a blind spot. So that's the 8, 9s, and 1s. Body types, that mean body type, you're in your gut more. You're not as in your feelings or your thoughts. You're more in action. And anyway, there's theory about how some of this happens and why, but in a nutshell, those are the body types. Then we're moving on to the heart types, 2s, 3s, and 4s. 2s, the sadness, all heart types are also very image conscious. Like, how am I being seen? They can be shapeshifters because they want to please their audience. 3s are the most famous for that, but all heart types can do that. 2s are often mistyped, they're mistyped with 9s, because these 2 types are very other referencing, always thinking about others before they're really thinking about their needs. So twos are in ambivalence to that feeling of sadness. So they don't underdo it, overdo it. They're feeling it. They're super sensitive emotionally, but because they're sort of thinking about the others first, they're repressing or suppressing, whether it's conscious or not, pushing down their feelings until it's in a really safe, maybe environment, like a coaching context or something. They can really, or with one close person. Um, they're called the helper, and that's associated with a lot of people just see that name, especially in a gender way. A lot of women think, oh, I'm a two. I help a lot. And of course, there is no all genders and all types can be any type, but and the two is much more than just a helper. They're doing it less like the nine, right? The nine is like, I want everyone to be chill and I just want peace and I don't want anybody to rock the boat. But twos are like, I am going to be kind of strategic with the special people that, and this is unconscious to everyone's credit, to everyone's defense. The twos are like, I think you might be able to meet my needs if I show you how well I'll meet your needs. And they can get really bent out of shape unconsciously when they try to make offers of help and then those offers aren't needed. And so let's see, anything else to say about the two? I don't know. As we're wheeling around, let's keep going. Three is the famous productive performer, often called the achiever. They are the quintessential, like we're in the US, we are a three culture. Every culture probably has an archetype. And what's interesting about three, so the middle of the heart types, and they underdo sadness. They're like sadness and emotions get in the way. I am living by my checklist. I'm getting things done. I am the productive performer. And they're very shape-shifting in different ways because in fact, I think it was called, they have a marketing orientation. They know how to show up in any given context and be the best version of what's expected. And so there is a talent to this. And there's a talent to all personality types, but the talent of the threes is this ability they usually are cheerful and they're getting a lot done. And what's wrong with that? Right. Just in personality. Why would you want to grow out of that? And a lot of threes don't come to coaching because they're so effective in their culture unless they just really hit some kind of rock bottom. And even then, they often construct a narrative later of, I am the phoenix that rose from the ashes. Look at me now. Because they just get so much satisfaction of other people mirroring back to them how effective they are. There are a lot of valedictorians are threes. A lot of athletes are threes. Okay. And then finally, in the heart types, the fours, you would say overdo the feeling of sadness by, at least stereotypically, they just express their emotions. So they're not underdoing it. They're not in ambivalence to it. They're very self-referencing. We've talked about a couple of other referencing types. Self-referencing doesn't mean selfish. It means I've got to consult with how I funnel reality through how I'm feeling or thinking about it before I can think about what's going on outside of me. And so fours are internalizing this. They're probably the most famous for being able to they're your friend who can handle the difficult emotions and just be totally comfortable there. I heard someone say at a recent training that the fours she knows are the best at funerals and weddings, which I thought was kind of funny because and it's not just the sadness and the difficult emotions. They are up and down and they're very expressive of the joy and the intensity of the joy that they might be feeling. So let's see, still wheeling around now we're into the head types, 5, 6s, and 7s. And they do lead with their heads. They're a little like slower to react, a little bit more defended and boundaried. Remember, fear is that underlying emotion. 5s are in ambivalence to that feeling of fear. They feel it, but they're really protected from it. They are probably the overall most introverted of all of the types. They are often engineers. They are really intellectual. And so even though, and strangely enough, 5s are quite sensitive, but they do not at all seem sensitive. And they've protected this, like sometimes with physical like boundaries in their office and they're surrounded by their literal books and walls, but sometimes it's just emotional boundaries or just like an energetic, just like I have my protected, and they cover up with knowledge, that sensitivity, that vulnerability. So a lot of 5s may not, like say they're new in the workplace, they may be really quiet and they may not speak often. And then though, when they feel comfortable with knowing what they need to know, then they will speak at length because they now feel safe and they're very, very knowledgeable and want to be seen that way. That's their protection. And I would also say their superpower. And, I'd say I like all different kinds of types and for different reasons. I have a lot of friends who over the past years who have been 5s. And I think where we connect is this idea, and we have 2 neighboring styles, a 4 and a 5. And we connect in that interesting what's interesting? What's an interesting idea? Going deep in it. And they have the more intellectual, and I might bring in that emotional kind of dimension to it. And it has an interesting energy. Moving on to the 6th, second to last of our types, is this head type of 6. They're called the observer. Oh, the 5 is called often the, let's see, actually, wow, how am I blanking really quickly on this? The 5 is usually called the observer, the distanced observer. The 6 is they overdo fear. They are projecting out fear. They are forecasting it. And so they're a head type like the 5s, but the 5s don't seem as in fear and anxiety. The 6s are really, they're forecasting, they're troubleshooting. A lot of people would say in our culture, well, they're like, oh, I'm a 6. It's like a lot of people want to be 3s, they want to be 8s, maybe they want to be 7s, the enthusiast. But the 6s is this forecaster, a troubleshooter, looking out to be protected. And they have a really interesting relationship to fear. And so I guess as we're so we don't overdo this, you can ask questions or curiosities. But just to move to the 7, it's the final of our head types. They're underdoing fear by running away from it, by being really upbeat and optimistic and running to the next shiny new object, always looking for an exit strategy, whether it's in a relationship or a literal meeting or a work environment. They want to have a plan. They want to know what's next. And so they are one of the most future-oriented of the head types. I think what's also interesting in thinking about like all the like head types at a time, a center of intelligence, is they also have a interesting, like maybe conflicted relationships to authority, but they have very subtle ways of dealing with that authority. And, 5s are going to be kind of little inner rebels, very critical, like they kind of have it all figured out in their head and non-emotional. You're not, and 6s, well, they do very different things depending on their subtype. They're dramatic. They're the kind of the most different, but in the end, it is a relationship to authority. And are they going to line up with that authority, or are they going to kind of attack the authority to push it away a little bit? 7s are charming authority. They're like kind of bringing the hierarchy down. If it's above them, they're charming it and if it's they're not always comfortable being in charge because then that kind of brings down their, hey, happy-go-lucky kind of thing.
All right.
So those are, hopefully a bit of a nutshell, where I'm trying to give some interesting nuggets as we swing around the dial of the 8 to the 9. To the 7.
Yeah, a couple questions on that. So as you're kind of going through some of those, and you're describing them. Sometimes, you were talking about certain ones, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I haven't done this test, so I'm like, oh, that one sounds like me. And then you got to another one, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that one might be me. Then another one, oh, okay, that one might be me. So I don't know if that's normal or if that's there's multiple dimensions as far as that goes. And then I guess maybe a follow-up question to that would just be application. Maybe we can talk work application, because I can see how some of this information would be helpful in the workplace, especially I think of leadership roles, and knowing what your team is, and how you can work best with them. We do DISC assessments in a lot of our trainings, and they're helpful, and can, it just knows you where you can flex to certain folks on your team, and be able to kind of adjust and, communicate with them how they best want to be communicated with. But maybe you can take both of those.
Well, okay. So the first part of your question, I think, would be, what we do. You can take a test. You could do a lot of reading. You can do a typing interview with a coach who can kind of ask you in an interview setting. But what you're wanting to think about is not just recency bias. You're wanting to think about, how have I been in these comparative descriptions my entire life? And that's, easier said than done, but that's how you're trying to respond to the test answers, as well as if you were being interviewed. What have I been doing all of my life to really get down to, and a lot of people ask, oh, can you change your type over time? And the answer is no. Your personality was constructed at a very early age. In some capacities, it began to solidify at 18 months. And certainly by the time you were 5, 6 years old. And so that is a personality structure that's carried with you all your life. Another aspect of it is, most people, the reason that they resist even being labeled and understood is that they each type does have certain superpowers, and it has worked for them this far. It's hard to do growth work. And so at least you can be aware of it. But a lot of people it's threatening. It's threatening to the ego and maybe disruptive. And you're like, well, I don't want to change who I am. I have a lot of superpowers, right? And we want to double down on them in the workplace. Anyway, I think that is a little bit of how it's not just behavioral. You have to also think about kind of some of those motivations of like why you've behaved in a certain way. And then I think also understanding the centers of intelligence. Do you think that as you understand them, are you an embodied type? Are you more of a image conscious, relational heart type? Or are you a little bit more anxious, fear-based, and very mental before you would take action in a head type? That can kind of help you begin to nail down. Communication and leadership, it's complex. I think that when we actually also use an interesting tool, the Leadership Circle Profile, which is an integrative model. And I think they did integrate some Enneagram into their assessment of all these different leadership capacities. And I think that it's helpful to know, as say I want to be more in my courageous authenticity, which is a great leadership capacity to have, because you're speaking what is true, even if it's a difficult conversation. And you're saying it though it's a brave way, but it's a firm way, and it's leading. That's moving into a leadership capacity that could be a number of types. It could be harder for some than others. But then in more of a reactive, less leadership space, a lot of heart types would fall into, I want to I want to comply. I don't want to shake the tree. I want to be more conservative in my I want to be nice. And those come at a cost. They may help you get along in the organization. You may be able to be popular in the organization, well liked, not causing conflict. But you're not able to step into taking bold, strong action no matter what. So this understanding the Enneagram does illuminate some of these more reactive capacities that we might have. Like more head types would be in a more reactive space of like maintaining aloofness, or appearing to be arrogant, or appearing to be, they're distanced in their coolness. And understanding that that's kind of one of the predispositions of being a head type can help you go, okay, this is what people are needing in your leadership to foster more team collaboration or to have more systems awareness, like ways to engage. And because it's not just all self-awareness. Self-awareness is one capacity of understanding ourselves as better, more effective leaders. Because I would say, and a brief thing about that is self-awareness is great, but a lot of types can get way too introspective, right? And so, and being super self-aware, but not being able to take that out socially and understanding how you're seen also comes at a cost to effective leadership. And I guess body types would fall more into controlling behavior or perfectionistic behavior rather than being able to move towards, hey, if I want to get things done and I'm being powerful as an 8 or a 9 or a 1, there are different capacities for leading into that in a more self-aware, what we would maybe call a creative dimension that isn't purely reactive in a more mechanical, unconscious way.
Okay.
I hope that kind of begins to answer it.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly does. And so, as far as the coaching side of this, are you typically working with individuals on kind of how they, number one, can have that self-awareness piece of things, but also then be able to just not have blind spots on what are some of the things that, maybe you would typically have a tendency to do, or I guess, tell me a little bit more about the coaching side of things.
Absolutely. It is useful to use the Enneagram, but as we say, it is not the end all be all. And there's a lot of ways to do profound, effective coaching without even using it as a tool at all. One of the methods that I love using and that I got in my coaching certification process, I don't like the term and I don't know a better one to use. It's called ontological coaching, which is that idea of, it's, I guess, the study of being, but it's this like almost Jedi way of beginning to self-observe in a way that does shift awareness and leads to different results. And it definitely transcends industries or whatever you're working at. Now, there's it's an important distinction to make, I guess, is a lot of people think of coaches as there's transaction coaches and there's transformation coaches is the common terminology now. And a transaction coach is great if that's what you need and want. If you need a dietitian, they're going to tell you how to lose weight. And this is or a tennis coach, right? Those are the knowing a very specific skill set and doing that and practicing it. Transformation is this idea of, I would say, similar to some of the ideas that we get. This is why I love the Enneagram, but it's, you become an observer, but you're observing like, well, what's going on in my body when I bring this stressor to my coach? Something's going on. There's a big breakdown or a little breakdown, whatever it is. And the coach, yes, we all are familiar with the coaches asking good questions, but it's so much more than that. And one of it is just reflecting back your thinking to you. And one of the practices is to like get still and pay attention to what's going on in your body when you are really thinking about being in this breakdown, stressful conversation, something's come up. And I mean, I've had a couple of stressful things that have happened this week, and it's a good practice to go, okay, what's going on? Be aware of what's going on in the body. And then often this is a very reductionistic way, but you can associate what emotions going on when you become aware of what's going on in the body. And then you can become more aware of, well, what's the story? What's the story I'm telling myself that is kind of fueling and keeping this whole breakdown alive and ongoing? And so that's the idea of sort of integrating, it's called the Bell method, understanding body, emotions, and the language that we're using, which is a reflection of our thoughts. But also, Keith, this idea of another easy way to remember this is the OR model. And that is this idea of, if you have a certain way of observing reality, whether or not you know your Enneagram type, right? You're observing reality in some way. And so you're taking whatever actions that are available to you from the given observer that you are. And that is leading to the results that you're getting in the world. And I love this idea of, when we begin to have a little bit more awareness of what's going on, we can kind of observe that observer, and we can at least come to the door of choice of like, do I want to keep doing things that the observer is doing, which are leading to these same actions and same results? Or do I want to go, okay, maybe I do shift how I'm perceiving things in one way or another so that I can then take different actions and experiment, at least, to see if I may then be able to break out and get different results. And so that's as much of a nutshell as I can make it, kind of some of the process of how just regular old fundamental good transformation coaching can happen. And then, of course, everything is easier said than done when it's all in our heads.
Mhm.
And the hard part is always doing the practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So tell me, Chad, that's very, very interesting. And enjoy hearing this, just, there's so much out there that I'm unaware of, right? And it's always good to hear.
All of us, yes.
Yeah. But tell me a little bit about what you're seeing out there right now with some of your clients, and what are some of the stressors? What are some of the things that you're helping people with?
Oh, well, it is a wonderful time to be alive. And I'm, there's so much data. There's so many things to be truly, authentically grateful for that in this time that we live in. And yet we also do live in a complicated time. There are some things that are particular to our time that are really creating some serious distress, individually and culturally in our lives. And so, I mean, burnout may be a little bit overused, a hot topic in certain ways, but it's a reality. It's there for, and so people are suffering from just, there's no boundaries in a way. They can't get away from work. Like, work outside of the office isn't what work outside of the office used to be. Now you can be, this is a whole thing, right? You can be slacked and texted and emailed and meetinged. You can have they've been complaining about meetings for a long time, all these different people have all these solutions for more effective meetings, but it still seems to be a problem, and people are burning out. So a lot of people too are very worried about getting their jobs replaced, wanting to prove their value, and are, suffering from not being able to do the things that they really want to, suffering from a lack of purpose, a lack of direction, a lack of meaning in their work. So I would say in general, we get a lot of clients that are heading toward burnout. Not so many that are in full blown, but a lot that we would call languishing, getting close, having the precursors for it. And a lot of people who are casting about, maybe in a transitional stage of life, who are seeking clarity of what those next steps need to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then you're right, as you mentioned, Slack and texting and even I know we have been around long enough to have seen cell phones, right? I mean, it's like, okay, I go to school, I didn't have a cell phone when I went to college, and then
Yeah, no.
it's kind of a new thing, but it really does all of a sudden create that. Here I'm leaving work and I am still available to be reached at pretty much any time. I guess there were
Oh,
pagers
yeah.
back in the day, but yeah, it's you're getting binged on your email and everything.
Yeah.
What are and so is part of it just being aware that these various things are out there, and then maybe strategizing on ways to be able to work around that and prevent yourself from that burnout.
Yeah, I mean, in general, because I would say, Keith, it's like again, I want to bring it back to this idea of awareness leads to choice and options. And we don't always have to take the choice, right? We don't always have to take the actions, but at least we're aware, and even with that awareness, whether it's a personality thing that we're choosing, do I want to work on this or not? Or whether it's something going on in the workplace that I'm going to choose to like make that the hill I want to die on one way or another, or like change meetings. Or it's like, let's bring it to the point of awareness. And then do you want to take action on that? And now you can take more considered action and it's tactical. Below the line is like you've risen to awareness. Now you can maybe have more strategy of what you want to work on, what you need to work on, and then you can begin to go tact. What do I need to do? Do I need to be sleeping better? Okay, that's one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go to bed at 9 if I want to get up at 5 or whatever it is,
Right.
So to workplace meetings in the workplace is like, are people complaining about it? Are we having 11 to 15 meetings that we don't need to have? And then you take those steps. So I think that's trying to be it's like a macro answer is to have more awareness of the things going on and then making the choices to take actions. And that's hard. I
Yeah.
think it's hard work, whether it's cultural or, individual or collective.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Chad, this has been great. If you could maybe tell everybody where they can find out more about you. Maybe before we go there, is there something that you were hoping to cover that we haven't covered yet? Certainly, we've still got plenty of time for that. So I want to make sure that if we
Thanks.
missed
No,
over
man,
something.
this is great. I really believe in the organic conversation and seeing where things go. So you kind of pursued your curiosities, and I was happy to help. I hope that we covered the Enneagram in 15 minutes adequately. Happy to come on and do anything more specific at any given time. But thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to be on your really awesome, very cool show.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate that. And I really enjoyed having you on the show. So yeah, maybe
Thank
we can go
you.
to how people can find out more about you, if they want to connect with you, if they want to get the coaching, do you have
Sure.
and just whether it's with you, is there a spot where people can go to get that Enneagram, kind of analysis of themselves?
Yeah, we do offer a test at bigselfschool.com. That's really just where to find us. We're on the social media. If you just look for Big Self School, you'll find us. I do have a book that I, published last year. There it is in the frame. It's called Shock Point, the Enneagram and Burnout and Stress. So that's the angle to help you apply it if you are under chronic stress. Learn more about burnout and also understand the subtypes, which we didn't, that's a layer of complexity which can really target in how you understand the Enneagram. When you can understand, do you lead with an instinct of self-preservation, social, or the sexual one-to-one? Fascinating stuff. But thank you. Just saying, bigselfschool.com.
Awesome. All right. Great, Chad. Appreciate it. And I've got 2 more questions for you that I ask every guest. I'm going to kind of modify one of them. Just, typically I'll ask, what advice you might give somebody just starting out in their investment journey. But I would just say maybe in their journey of life, just based on, kind of your background and everything. What advice would you give folks out there?
Okay. Well, I would say that, I wish I had known a lot of this 2 decades ago, right? So I would say it's not just because it's trendy, it's because there is now, if you need to be persuaded by empirical evidence, the evidence is there. The research studies are there that these practices, this stuff going on in your head is studied by neuroscientists now. Emotions are not just soft skills. They're real things that impact your reality. And yes, you need to be compassionate with yourself as you begin to self-observe your behaviors. But also, maybe it's this idea of a rose and a sword. Be gentle and compassionate with yourself, and be willing to be honest with yourself, and you know, move that sword of truth in your life as well, because it will serve you. You will be a more satisfied human being in a culture that probably will be steering you to things that you don't even realize are happening.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I love it. How about a book recommendation? I know obviously your book, but anything you've read recently that's been impactful that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I'm in a really fun book group that, you kind of have to read what's put before you. And I just read The Courage to be Disliked, which wasn't the easiest read because it's in this question and answer format, but it's a bestseller, and I think for a good reason. And it did have, what books leave a mark on you and kind of change your thinking, and that book did. The Courage to be Disliked. It's a lot more than just can I say things that may risk me? It's really about it's hard to say in a nutshell. A lot of you begin to go, oh, it's a lot of, instead of thinking of psychology as a backward looking trauma filled, look at my wounds, I'm a victim. It's really psychology can be used in this way of very forward thinking. How do I develop resilience, and how can I do these practices as just a way of life?
Yeah.
I thought it was a really great book, The Courage to be Disliked.
I'll definitely check it out. I have not had that one yet on the show, so I appreciate it, Chad. Chad, this has been really fun.
Yeah.
Appreciate our time together,
me too.
and thank you so much for being on the Wealth Flow.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a real delight, and it has been fun. So thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.